My name is Jocelyn Martin, and I'm from the English department of the Ateneo de Manila University here in the Philippines, where I have been teaching and researching on memory studies since the last 7 years. My interest in memory studies also intersects with fields such as post-colonial studies, translation studies, environmental humanities, and political listening. And I'm very happy to participate in this series of videos. I was invited by Roger Adden of the University of Ohio for this venture. So I'm happy to participate. And we are doing this video today, January 7th, in the Ateneo de Manila campus in Quezon City. So most of my work explores memory studies within the Philippine context, and this is what I'm interested in doing today with all of you. I have been asking how epistemologies of such context would enrich, interrogate, and compare with contexts and with concepts of memory studies which are more or less Western-based. And so I won't explore, I won't dwell into the aspect of memory studies as far as the Western canon or the Western context is concerned. We know already how it started with the pioneers like Halbwachs and Pierre Nora, along with the Asmans and the recent turn to what we call now traveling memory or transcultural memory or transnational memory, the memory that is unbound. So what I would like to ask today actually is what would a Filipino memory studies look like? What would a Filipino what would the Filipino context contribute to a field such as memory studies? And so I'll be developing actually a topic that I already started exploring during the Memory Studies Association conference held in Madrid last June 2019, and it's a project I'm developing for a paper with colleagues from the University of Complutense as well. So here, just to give you an idea, this is the outline of my session, our session today in the next 40 minutes or so. Which is divided, I try to neatly divide into two big parts. The first one is we will look into the language itself. I would like to look into more or less 4 main words or even more that indicate memory. And then my main source for these is the Diccionario ng Wikang Filipino, or the Dictionary of the Filipino Language, prepared by the Komisyon ng Wikang Filipino, or the Commission of the Filipino Language. In a further project, I will include other dictionaries, of course. Actually, I will already cite the UP Diccionario as well, the dictionary prepared by the University of the Philippines. So that's one part. The other part, I will also actually evoke the language and context, but more on the topic and in the context of traumatic memory. I'm also interested actually in trauma studies, and I will talk about 3 main points for the moment. All that concerns what I call the group culture vis-a-vis Freudian one-to-one therapeutic healing. We know that in trauma studies, Freud, at least more so in the beginning, was very much put forward. The second topic is also on the desaparecidos, or the disappeared. It's something that is familiar to our ears because it is a traveling concept. And then the third, I interrogate the paradigmatic, if there is one, a paradigmatic traumatic experience of World War II as far as this context, our context, is concerned. We know very well how Holocaust studies has played an important role in memory studies. So is there a place of the Holocaust actually also in the Philippine context? So this is our plan for today. So it's interesting to note the over a dozen ways of signifying memory or remembering actually in the Filipino language. So we have words such as gunita, alaala, and memoria, among others. I won't, this is not the place to explore all this. This will be tackled in another paper. So these are nouns, okay? And the Diccionario ng Wikang Filipino says they are, they denote the capacity, it's a capacity to recall the past. Kakayahan o kapangyarihan. Kakayahan is capacity, kapangyarihan is pouvoir, it's power. Or kapangyarihan ng isip na magtanda ng mga nakaraan. So to recall the past. It's something, it's a faculty of, it's a faculty to recall the past. But what I would like to focus, which I think interesting for our short session actually today, is the word tandaan. Is a verb to express, to remember. Okay, it's to remember. Itanim sa alaala, which it's very interesting. It actually literally means to plant in memory, I mean, the definition at least that they give. It's as if, it's interesting to see this image of planting something in memory as if we want to make it grow or stay there, you know, to plant in a memory. And so tandaan, to remember, it's not just, it expresses anamnesis, you know. It's something that there is an effort. We have to remember something. There's an effort behind it. And its root word, interestingly, it's very interesting, it's tanda, okay? Tanda. And the dictionary says, okay, tanda indicates a mark or a señal, a mark or a sign. For those who are familiar with Plato's wax tablet, you know, where there's a mark that is left in that tablet, it evokes this image of the wax tablet, you know, but the tanda it enriches our understanding of memory, because it has a second level that the Diccionario indicates. It's also a signifier of age, okay, edad and gulang, you know, which are synonyms. So it's, yeah, on the one hand a mark, and at the same time a signifier of age. Okay, and this is why we call an elderly person a matanda. Okay, so that's your grandparents, or any elderly person. So it's interesting because on the one hand, so an elderly person is said to be matandain, to have this capacity to reach out to a long past, to remember a lot, matandain. And at the same time, isn't it interesting that old people are also prey to forgetfulness, so Alzheimer's disease, dementia. So senility is there, can be possible. And so it's interesting that in the figure of the matanda, we have in one idea, in one concept, the inseparability of remembering and forgetting, which has been evoked by many thinkers before. So it's like two sides of one coin. In the matanda, we have the inseparability of remembering and forgetting. So I thought that was interesting. There's also this expression, and I'm sure there are many others, and there are more people here who are experts in Philippine linguistics than I am. There's this expression, hindi ka na nagtanda. Hindi ka na nagtanda. It's usually somebody says it when to scold somebody, and it means you haven't learned anything. You haven't learned. Hindi ka na nagtanda. You haven't learned. So it's interesting to see here how aging and remembering is equivalent to acquiring wisdom. It implies that if we remember our past faults, if we remember our past errors, we should be able to acquire more wisdom, acquire more intelligence. We should have learned something from the past. Okay, so that's for tandaan, that's for tanda. Interestingly. Another term, alaala. Alaala, which also signifies a capacity to recall. A capacity to recall, kakayahan, again, this capacity, or kapangyarihan, power to think, to remember the past. Okay. At the same time, it's interesting that the dictionario also gives it another meaning. It denotes a gift. So bagay o anumang ibinibigay bilang handog, a regalo, as a gift, and so memory can be a gift in that sense. It recalls the happy end of memory, recognition as happy end of memory, but also this perhaps in other languages, but in French. We have the word souvenir, souvenir, se souvenir de. We also have the same word. Maybe it can be compared one day. J'ai un souvenir de, et un souvenir in also as noun. Okay, let's move forward and go to another interesting term. Another word, which is agam, or what we mostly use as agam-agam. So it's a word that is interesting for us because it denotes both past and future in a sense. So the dictionario accords it a meaning of uncertainty, foreboding feelings of doubt and fear. Pangamba, alinlangan, kutob, So that's the first context. May agam-agam ako. I have this worry for something. However, I discovered recently, especially after there was this big typhoon, historical in its proportions, last 2013. You might have heard of the typhoon Haiyan, or in the local name of which is Yolanda. So it killed over 6,000 people, making it one of the most powerful typhoons ever to make landfall in recorded history. Okay, so and I found this book here called AGAM, okay, AGAM, published by the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities in 2014. So 1 year after the tragic climate event. And it quotes the Diccionarium Filipino, the UP Diccionarium Filipino, the University of the Philippines' dictionary, to ascertain that agam not only refers to disquiet and doubt, but actually also a memory of the past and the ability to think. So I put here, so it's not just about foreboding feelings of doubt and fear, which concerns the future, but it's also a memory of the past and another faculty, the ability to think. Okay, so which for the Dictionarium, UP Dictionarium Filipino, it contains both. And it's interesting, so it involves many different faculties there. So in one word, agam or agam, we have doubt, fear. But this doubt and fear does not impede somebody to think to think further for the future. And at the same time, culling this from a memory of the past, you know. And I think it was really, it's interesting to have made it the title of this collection dedicated to a climate disaster. So it's, it would be interesting, for example, because I'm doing comparisons here with concepts from the West. For example, I've also looked into Ian Kaplan's work on climate, and she theorized or developed rather what she calls the pre-TSS, the pre-traumatic stress syndrome. Okay, we are more familiar with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but she talks about the pre-TSS, which is a fear of a future terrifying event of a similar kind. A fear of a future terrifying event of a similar kind. And she wrote this work after Hurricane Sandy, okay, in the States. So it's very relevant to discuss these things in this age of climate change and with the fires burning in Australia for the moment, you know. But going back to agam, it's interesting that pre-TSS and agam resemble in as much as there is this look towards the future is concerned and the anguish that is there, the doubt that is there. However, agam includes the ability to plan, to think. And I'm not making any conclusions here, but a colleague of mine, Maria Caran, suggested interestingly how there's this difference, of course, between with contexts like the Philippines, which is used to 20 typhoons per year on average. That is on average, not to mention the earthquakes, etc., that we have here. But there is, it's a society which is used to cyclical typhoons and climate disasters. And many people have talked about the resilience of the Filipinos, the resilience of the Philippines. It's as if we need to plan anyway for the next one because it's going to come anyway. You know, so there's this slight difference. I'm not trying to romanticize resilience, and I know that it can be an excuse for not doing anything. But just to, it's interesting to note this ability to plan and to think. And interestingly, the word panahon, okay, panahon here indicates both time, okay, time and weather. Time and weather. So what does that say to a culture where time and weather actually are encapsulated in one word? You know, I have also, I would like to thank my colleague here, Christian Benitez from the Filipino department, who wrote recently a piece on panahon, exploring its metonymy. It's interesting perhaps to compare it with, I don't know, le temps in French as well. Le temps is also time and also weather, you know. But time is interesting for memory because we just have time of the past. We need time in order for memory to occur. Okay, so the words matanda, agam, and panahon interestingly take on different layers of meanings, even those that seem opposite. And they enrich, I hope, they make us think of further ideas for the field of memory studies. Okay, I go to my the second part of this session, with the context of traumatic memory and healing, and I would like to start with the word kapwa, which can mean fellow human being. Okay, fellow human being. And it points to the group culture of the Philippines, the barangay mentality, where one's identity is based on community belongingness. It's interesting to compare it to what I'm trying to point out here is that in foreign interventions, for example, to help out climate disasters, for example, as what happened in Samar, we can see how this can go against a therapeutic model that is one-to-one Freudian, for example. But first, I would like to read this semi-lengthy excerpt to be able to explain more on this group culture. So, the Filipino barangay or group culture can be traced back to its Malay and Indonesian ancestry, which places emphasis on the family. Akin to the Japanese Bushido spirit, which stresses loyalty, the group culture places the family's need or the group's welfare first before the individual's own interest. As Filipino psychologist Virgilio Enriquez explains, once the ako or ego starts thinking of himself as separate from kapwa or fellow men, the Filipino self gets to be individuated and in effect denies the status of kapwa to the other. By the same token, the status of kapwa is also denied to the self. The importance of group culture, the importance of one's identity in a group. And I'm going back to the example of the Haiyan typhoon, Yolanda typhoon in November 2003. And I draw from this study, obliged to be grateful by Ong and colleagues, where the sense of kapwa comes into conflict with targeted interventions within tight-knit communities. So foreign aid comes in and distributes goods to only one area, and which is good in itself, but within tight-knit communities, it actually, if one distributes only to one area and not to the other, it actually creates petty jealousies. And if one neighbor does not benefit and the other does, you know. So it may run against a form of help or aid if group culture is less considered, or considered not too much, you know. Desaparecidos. We have heard of this word, traveling from the Spanish language. I think my colleague Paco Ferrandis from Complutense, who is doing a lot on desaparecidos, and he informed me how it's a term that actually traveled from Latin America. So it's a traveling concept, and we know how concepts move. Our memory concepts are unbound, are traveling, and here it's in the context of the Philippines. Even the spelling has an S, not a C. So here, our version is the Philippines version of over 1,000 people who disappeared during the Marcos dictatorship from 1972 to 1986. So for those who do not know a lot about this, Ferdinand Marcos's regime from these years, 1972 to 1986, while it saw a lot of infrastructures, it also was known for a lot of disappearances and tortures, which included electric shock, Russian roulette, beating, strangulation, etc. So there were more than 34,000 victims, and who are still actually trying to voice out their pleas until today. So, and there are still over 700, over 1,000 disappeared. So it's interesting to see how this term travels and actually applies also to this context today. The last item on my list is World War II, and is there such thing as a paradigmatic trauma on this side of the globe? We cannot deny the place of Holocaust studies in memory studies until today. Until today, there's a thriving research. There's thriving research on Holocaust. But somebody like Jeffrey Alexander actually asked once, is the Holocaust Western? Is the Holocaust Western? And if one asks the Filipino what was the paradigmatic trauma of, social disaster of World War II, that would be the occupation and colonization rather than the Holocaust on this side, you know. And so on the one hand, what I'm trying to say here is following Steph Grapp's post-colonial witnessing, you know, how we can consider other paradigms in their own terms and for their own terms. Okay, I'm not trying to dilute the Holocaust experience. How can one do that? But what I'm trying to say that there are other situations in other contexts, and at the same time, instead of not including the Holocaust story at all, on the contrary, thanks to research work done by colleagues here, Joed Tirol here of Ateneo, and Sharon Del Mendo and Noel Izon, who have done this video, An Open Door, for example, we see actually, it's more and more known now how the Philippines participated in rescuing over 2,000 Jews during the Nazi regime. I don't know if you know about this group of European refugees who escaped Kristallnacht, okay, and were welcomed by then President Manuel Quezon, who was declared or who received the title Schindler of Asia, referring, of course, to Oskar Schindler. And there is now this monument standing in Israel to commemorate such event. So so this group so it's interesting. It's interesting on the one hand, not to forget colonization and occupation, and on the one hand, to not to forget this nice story actually that the Philippines was a haven for European refugees. It's interesting in this age also of refugees. There were we also had our share of welcoming refugees, and this group eventually called themselves Manilaners. Manila, from the word Manila. It's interesting. The root word is Manila, so the capital city, and they included the suffix er in German. Where in German language, of course, you put the er in the end. I am from Berlin. Ich bin ein Berliner. I am from Würzburg. Ich bin ein Würzburger. And then they put Ich bin ein Manilaner. So there is this adaptation of the word as well. It's very interesting. And here we have, incidentally, this is a picture. It's a bit blurred, but it's all I can get. It's a picture of the indignation rally held on the 19th of November 1938. So it was a reaction against Kristallnacht. Okay, so we can imagine on the other side of the world, after Kristallnacht, there was this indignation rally, which interestingly took place in the Intramuros, in the old campus of this university, of Ateneo de Manila, then. So we celebrated 75 years a few years ago. So that's the interesting part of the Philippines in this story, among others. Okay. Well, okay. This is all actually what we have for today. Thank you for listening until here. I would like to specifically thank all these colleagues here for their contributions, for their ideas, for talking with me. And I hope that you were able to learn something from this session. Thank you.